Hey everybody, welcome to Behind the Scenes, a podcast where we talk about the intersection of pop culture and big ideas. I'm your host and creator of the Out of Frame web series on YouTube, Sean Malone. With me, as always, is Jennifer Mavasanti, our senior writer and editor of the Out of Frame shorts, Paul Nelson. Thank you guys. How was your week? How are you doing?
I'm tired.
Tired?
I'm so tired.
What have you been doing all week?
Chasing kids. Doing my job.
I feel like that's a lot of both of your jobs.
Yes.
Chasing kids.
Kids are out of school.
Yeah.
Mom and dad are still working full time. Well, at least in my house, I'm working full time from home. My husband's working full time from home. And we have 2 9.5-year-old boys.
I don't know how you do it.
I don't know how I do it either.
You're going to figure it out in the relatively near future, I feel like.
Yeah. So my wife, she stays at home. Well, I guess everybody is now. But
we're all staying at
We're all stay-at-home parents.
So she usually takes care of the boys during the day.
Yeah.
And so it's been, for me, this quarantine has actually been pretty nice.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that too loud. I feel like kind of dirty for having that, but
yeah,
I take out the commute, get more work time and more family time. So
yeah, that's a lucky position to be in.
It works out.
Yeah, definitely does.
Yeah.
And I was a stay-at-home mom for like 7 years.
It is the hardest job.
Yeah,
I hear what goes on upstairs. So in my office in the basement, and I am just like, oh my,
like actually getting a full-time 9-to-5 job outside of my home was almost like taking a break.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It was twins, especially.
Yeah, twin boys.
It's got to be a thing.
But it's the only kind of madness I know. It's fine. Yeah. But I have a rather adorable story about my boys to relate.
Go for it.
So lately, Thing 1 and Thing 2 have been watching Avatar: The Last Airbender, the series, because it's on Netflix now.
And it is one of the best series of all time.
It is delightful. And it's one of those things that we actually have been watching as a family. And then the other day, as they do from time to time, they asked if we could watch some Fee videos on YouTube because my children are my children. And so they're kind of dweebs. So we were going through and I was like, all right, well, what kind of Fee video do you want to watch? They're like, we want to watch Out of Frame, but not behind the scenes. I was like, okay, first of all, rude, but all right. So we're going through the Out of Frame features playlist, and I figured that they'd want to watch the episode on the anti-authoritarianism in Harry Potter. Mm-hmm. So I was scrolling through trying to get to that one. And they see the episode thumbnail for the Avatar, The Last Airbender episode. They're like, ooh, mommy. I was like, all right, we'll watch it.
Which I have said many times is actually one of my favorite episodes.
And it's like a heavy episode,
It
too.
is, yeah.
But they were wrapped, like they paid close attention to the video. And then that evening after dinner.
It's really dark. I mean, it's about the Christchurch shooting for the most part. But how do we get out of that?
Yeah.
Is the sort of theme.
So that evening, asked to watch Avatar after dinner. We all sit down together. Thing 2 is like, Daddy, I really like this show. And my husband's like, I really like it too. And he goes on to say, Thing 2 goes on to say, and it teaches us some very important lessons about the evils of collectivism. And I was like, oh, so proud. And like my husband's eyebrows just shoot up and he looks at me like, what have you been telling them? I was like, we watched it Out of Frame. So it was.
I'm really glad to hear that because like a lot of the times, like I'll write those kinds of things and it's not, I'm not writing for kids really, especially not with an episode like that. I mean, it's heavy. It's about a kind of a massacre of a lot of people for, racially collectivist reasons, racist reasons. And the whole thing behind that of like this kind of like really disgusting racist nationalism that's kind of infecting a lot of parts of the world in general, including the United States for that matter. But what's so important about stuff like that to me is like you get the opportunity to see, and Avatar gives you such a perfect example of this, because it is all about tribalism,
right?
And then people coming together from different tribes and learning that like the tribes aren't the important part of their identity.
Yeah.
You know, like, yes, somebody's water tribe and earth tribe and Fire Nation and all this stuff. But like the reality is, are they good people?
Mm-hmm.
Are they able to find common ground? Are they able to be friends? Are they able to find ways of getting past like the historical tribal animosities? And that's what I always loved about the series. And the series sets that up so incredibly well. So yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
Like 9-year-olds.
It was adorable.
Yeah,
And
that's awesome.
they're about that age where they're really beginning to develop that abstract thinking ability. And so they're a lot more curious about the heavier things in the world going on than they ever were before.
Well, now it feels like the right time to do that. And then especially because if you can't have those conversations with people, I always just feel like you grow up without really examining any of it.
Yeah.
I think it's way better to even this early.
It's a weird phase as far as like how to parent them.
Right.
Like it's very confusing for us.
Yeah, I bet.
It's probably very confusing for them too. But it's nice that we can have this framework for them to like experience something entertaining and then talk about the meaning that we can extract from that.
And I think that's what's so powerful about Out of Frame is that you can talk about these things through a lens of something that people actually care about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that, I mean, we've talked about this at length. It just does not happen with these ideas ever.
No.
Yeah.
And it's just been done so poorly that it's no surprise that most of the stuff you see on television and movies don't agree with what a lot of the things you would say that Out of Frame talks about. So
and it's been, I mean, and I think you're right, and it's been obviously a big part of the reason why I wanted to start the show in the first place was because there aren't a lot of things that convey or even try to convey what I think of as really, really important ideas, and collectivism being really at the top of the list for me to a large extent, because it like various forms of collectivism are really at the root of a ton of different problems.
Yeah.
And it's not something that people really even are conscious of or think about that much. But when you think about all of the isms in the world, or many of the isms, racism, sexism, and all the various kinds of bigotry that people are now really upset by, in the, all over the country, but all over the world, like stuff that people are like rioting about, protesting about and stuff. But quite a lot of the time, the people who are rioting and protesting are still actually adopting the framework of collectivism in their thinking. So now it becomes, I'm anti-racism, except for I still see black, white, Hispanic, Asian as distinct groups of people that are inherently
as well.
Monoliths and inherently different, or men, women, or however you kind of want to break that stuff down, and we're still doing the same things. And to me, that's really, if you can't get to the root of the problem, you're never really going to solve that problem. And not treating people like individuals is huge part of that. And I think Avatar it was one of those perfect examples for me of something where I didn't pull anything out of the show that's not there. It's entirely in the series.
Yeah.
And it's a really important theme in the series. Getting past, especially the Zuko stuff, like getting past those tribal animosities and coming together and finding connection. Yeah. That's awesome. I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah. I've been just coming back to something I talked about a couple weeks ago, Doom Patrol. Begin on like season 2 of Doom Patrol. It's been out for a few weeks now, and it's fantastic. It's Doom Patrol, I think I said this on maybe even our first episode. It's a weird show. It's all kinds of like kind of crazy situations, and there's, oh man, I got stuff I actually got to talk to you about off air that it's inappropriate for me to talk about here. It's part of Doom Patrol. But this season it's really kind of actually moving in a lot of ways, because it's centered a lot around a little girl character who's really struggling. She's like an 11-year-old who is not treated very well by a lot of people, and she's been kind of, because of her power, she has been kept almost in a prison for most of her life, and she's had to be isolated from other people, and it's manifested, problems. And yet she's still like the sweetest, cutest little girl, and it's like the whole series is about like finding reasons to care about yourself and finding reasons to care about other people in a world where you're not really given many to start with, and family and connection and coming together, and yet it's weird and just bizarre and everything at the same time. So I'm really loving season 2. It's really, really great. I've been also, because I'm watching DCU stuff, like continuing to watch Stargirl. I think you told me earlier that it's going to be picked up by CW, which I did not realize, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
I was complaining before about it being a little too toothless in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. I think it fits on CW. It's like, it's got that like teenager, teen girl lead, kind of very, very mild consequences, mild violence, stuff like that's not, it doesn't actually fit in the world of Doom Patrol, because Doom Patrol can be, I mean, it's very philosophical and it's very sweet in a lot of ways, but it's also very dark and very violent and very, adult stuff happens in that show. Same thing I was talking about Swamp Thing, and Stargirl still they faced a few more consequences from the last time. I think I said I wanted one of the main characters' arms to be cut off or something like that.
Yeah.
I still feel that way. They faced a little bit more consequences than they had the last time I talked about it, but it's getting better, actually, I think. And also Luke Wilson's still really good in that. Amy Smart's still really good in that. So
yeah, might have to check out Doom Patrol.
Yeah, it's a weird show. It's a very like sci-fi, strange kind of experience, but also I don't think I mentioned if you'd seen Legion.
I haven't seen Legion
on FX. Similar vibe in some ways. Like if you like that, because it's surreal and kind of strange.
I remember thinking that it appealed to me
Legion
when I was watching like the trailers for
Legion's
it. I don't have cable.
Yeah. Yeah, FX is a tough one too, because the FX stuff doesn't always show up on other platforms.
Yeah.
It's hit and miss.
Yeah. What are you watching?
So I've been going back through rewatching Glow on Netflix.
Nice.
It is a show about a women's professional wrestling TV show.
True story.
Based off a true story in the early 80s. And I also am a wrestling nerd, so this was right up my alley. And it really puts you in that early 80s. Sexism is rampant.
Yeah.
And it's just a different look on a time period where most movies and TV shows, the leads are male, and this is totally different. Yeah. This is mostly a woman's cast, and it's just a really interesting look at a time and topic that is not normal. Yeah. Which I had been enjoying. So yeah, check it out if you like wrestling. And
I haven't gone back and rewatched it since it came out, since the first season came out. Really, really liked the first season. And then I watched the documentary that Netflix put out about the actual Glow group, and that was pretty interesting as well.
The real story is pretty wild as well. So
it seemed pretty wild, and also it had a little bit of the same beats as some of the other documentaries I've seen about professional wrestling, where it's a lot of kind of weirdos who get involved in this kind of stuff. And and that's, I say that with love in general.
No, it's true though.
But also they really destroy themselves doing this kind of stuff. It's been one of the things that I've come to learn as an adult about wrestling. Like when I was a kid, there was the whole thing of like, oh, wrestling's fake or whatever. And then I've come around the other side of that, going like, wrestling is drama, and it's entertainment, and it's
Right.
theater. But the physicality is not fake.
No,
No.
a lot of stuff you can fake. You can pull a punch, but you can't pull a steel chair to the face.
Yeah, and you can't pull I got thrown out of the ring and landed on a table. Like that's just happens.
Yeah.
That's just what people
like,
are doing.
Lifting a 250-pound man over your head
Right.
and then throwing him on the ground.
Right.
Yeah, none of that stuff is really fakeable in that sense. Not live, not in theater. And these guys end up with broken backs and just horrible knee problems. And the ladies of Glow had the same kind of problems.
And they do this
over
week
time.
in, week out, day after day.
Yeah, brutal.
And
Yeah.
Right.
It's impressive. You have to have that love for this very specific thing to
Yeah.
want to do that for a job.
And they start in the amateur leagues and just
Yeah.
doing it for free, like
Yeah.
paying to do it.
Yep.
And then
Oh, yeah.
hopefully
They make it.
they
to
catch a break.
Yeah, it's such a. I mean,
It's,
it's
like,
kind of
so
a crazy life, but
It's a lot like racing, honestly.
I bet. Yeah, actually, I hadn't thought about that. But racing, you usually start with your own.
Oh, yeah.
Pay for your own way in.
I cannot emphasize how rare it is to actually make money driving a race car.
Well, the old saying
Yeah.
is, how do you become a millionaire racing Formula One? You start with $1 billion.
Yeah, basically.
Right. Yeah,
It's such an expensive sport to get into, and most drivers break even, maybe,
I bet.
like if they're lucky. Like, it is so rare to actually make money.
Yeah.
And what we see on TV, like the racers in Formula One, in MotoGP, these big, in NASCAR, like these big A-list race car names.
Yeah. You're like
they're the
Michael
exception.
Schumachers of
Yeah.
the world, right?
Yeah.
Well, even in Formula One, you have drivers that pay the teams to
Oh, yeah.
to race.
Absolutely.
Wow.
You can 100% buy a seat, even on a Formula One team.
Well, that's what
But-
everybody claimed with like Niki Lauda or whatever, right? Like they were saying that Niki Lauda like bought his way in.
I don't actually remember if Niki Lauda did or not.
Well, I don't know
but
if he
dude
did,
could
but I
wheel.
think people
okay?
were like-
Dude could wheel.
He's not the typical pay for driver that you
No.
Probably.
Yeah, he could actually.
He could actually drive.
But I think that was one of the criticisms. That was like the whole James Hunt versus Niki Lauda thing in Rush, right? Was
Well, James Hunt also bought his seat. So, I mean,
Fair
what
enough.
do you want? Like, come on now. So
It's the business, yeah. Unfortunately.
that's the business. And so, like
Well,
my sons are super into it, right?
But sorry, we're going on to a whole
we're a whole
tangent here, but
tangent,
but it makes me wonder too, like when you get people like Senna, where this is like the extent of my knowledge of racing at this point, like we're reaching the limit of my ability, but he came out of like poverty in Brazil, right?
Yeah.
So like it's amazing that you'd ever get anybody like that into that kind of sport.
And
But-
he did a lot of philanthropic work with his salary and his winnings back home in Brazil.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, all that stuff is really interesting. It's I replied to somebody on Quora a couple years ago that like doesn't have a ton of upvotes, but it gets enough consistently where like every couple weeks I get like a notification, an email that somebody upvoted it about why we don't pay like teachers the same way as we pay, or I think engineers, I think was the question, like as much as we pay actors. And part of my response was, I mean, there's the big economics response, which is that there's subjective value questions here, and that what a engineer does, for example, while it may create a lot of value for the company that they work for, it generally speaking is not creating like the en masse the amount of value that like a celebrity is creating for millions of people, right? So you can have somebody get paid millions and millions of dollars because they show up in a movie that gets seen by 10 million people or something like that over time. And so that's very different than somebody who works as like an engineer or a teacher or something like that, maybe interacts with creating value for 30 or 40 people at a time or more sometimes. But I mean, it's just not the same, right?
Yeah.
But part of my response was about challenging the premise of the question, which was the idea that that actors actually do make any money, because generally speaking, they don't.
Yeah.
The vast majority are not paid at all, and it is a tiny, tiny percentage who actually make it to that level, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's true of all the entertainment, sports and racing and wrestling and all of this stuff. Like it's not easy to get there, But that's cool. I might have to go back and rewatch Glow, especially from the beginning.
Yeah, season 1 is definite watch. I've going back through now, but season 2 is pretty good. Season 3 I didn't enjoy it as much, but season 1 by itself, it has a very complete arc. So if you didn't watch the next 2 seasons, you're not really missing out on much. But season 1 is really interesting.
But the thing we all watched this week was a brand new movie out on Hulu for the first time.
What?
New content. New content. Brand new.
I know.
So exciting.
I don't even know what to do with myself. This
has been a long time coming. We actually have a new movie to talk about, Palm Springs.
Yep.
Hulu original. It's actually written and directed by people I don't think have really ever done anything before. Andy Ciara and Max Barbacow. I looked on their IMDb's, like they've done a couple features before, but there's nothing you would have heard of really. There's no big releases or anything like that. And it stars 2 of my favorite people, honestly, Andy Samberg and Christina Milioti, who I legit have had a crush on basically since How I Met Your Mother. So she's just like the most adorable person to me.
She's precious.
And it's a film about a guy and then later a girl stuck in a time loop in Palm Springs. Mm-hmm. And I loved it. I really, really loved the movie. And I actually ended up watching it. I watched it right when it came out, and then I watched it again just before we did this recording. And I've watched it twice now and really enjoyed it even more the second time, because there are things that get revealed over the course of the movie that it's always nice, like, you go back and kind of pick up, especially for a time loop movie. You
pick up little things here and there.
You want to go back and see like what was set up, what was not set up, like what can you find in the scenes and things like that. And there's some nice stuff that's set up before you actually interact with the rest of the plot of the movie. But before we get into it, like, what did you guys, like, first impressions? What did you guys think?
It was okay. I liked it. I watched. Spoiler alert for our Patreon crowd, we'll be talking about Groundhog Day later.
Yeah.
And if you want that content, become a Patreon.
That's right. Bonus for this episode, Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
So I watched Groundhog Day before I watched Palm Springs. So it's 2 time loop movies back to back. So I think I'm a little bit skewed on that. I think if I watched it clean, I would have appreciated it more, because Groundhog Day, basically,
I mean, it is the OG time loop,
right?
movie.
Yeah.
So, and Bill Murray is Bill Murray. So I think I have a little bit of that. But Pat, I love Andy Samberg.
Yeah,
just in general.
We were talking about your favorite, one of your favorite movies.
One of my favorite movies is Hot Rod.
Which
it honestly doesn't surprise me.
It gets me every time. The opening scene, I lose it. Every time. I know it's coming, but I lose it. I cannot help myself. It is so stupid, but so funny. So Andy Samberg, right up my alley. And when this first came out, when I saw it, I was like, ooh, I have to watch this. And so I enjoyed it. But we'll talk about more stuff later. So
what do you think, Jen?
It was
I thought it was delightful. I really enjoyed it. There were a few moments here and there where, okay, so set up here. I am not a fan of embarrassment-based humor. Meet the Parents is like my least favorite movie. Like, I hate it. It's just, I cannot stand it.
I imagine a lot of Ben Stiller would be tough for you in that sense.
I just,
because there's
where the punchline is somebody else's,
or Steve Carell in a lot of cases.
Mm-hmm. When the punchline is somebody else's embarrassing moment, like, is very cringy for me. I don't enjoy it. So there were some moments in this movie that I did not like because of that. But taken as a whole, it was fun and it was funny and it was actually kind of heartwarming.
Yeah.
And
that's a lot of what I liked about it, honestly, is we're living through like a ludicrously cynical kind of awful moment in history in a lot of ways.
oh God.
And to an extent, I feel like the kind of the romantic comedy is like utterly dead right now. Like there's just full disclosure, my wife and I watched Hitch the other day, which has been a long time since I saw that movie. And I kind of enjoyed it, actually.
Refreshing?
It was refreshing.
Yeah.
I liked Hitch.
Because
it's a good movie.
First of all, Will Smith, just the most charming human being that's ever lived.
Yes.
So there's that. And actually, like, played against Kevin James works so well.
Yep.
Speaking of embarrassing comedies, right? And like humor played off of embarrassment, right? Like, but Kevin James, like, one of the things that's great about Kevin James, I feel like, is that he always, he's always the butt of his own joke quite a lot of the time, but he's also still like happy in the moment. Like he's still like, does it with confidence and he's fine with himself and all that kind of stuff. And
I think it's just the execution
it is
of those
of course
embarrassment jokes that.
But we watched Hitch, and I was like, wow, that's good. It's like this is like a whole different time in human history where we can have a fun movie where, and by the way, Will Smith's character is a genuinely good guy the entire movie.
Yeah.
The worst thing that happens really with him is a misunderstanding, fundamentally. I mean, there's the embarrassing stuff that he goes through with Eva Mendes on the date and, the various dates and whatever. But like, mostly he's a really, really good guy. And then you watch movies now and like everybody's horrible.
Yeah.
It's like awful. And this is like the first movie I've watched in a long time that was like, oh, you know what? This is like a bright, fun, funny, like good romantic comedy that's just about pretty normal people. Like we'll get into like whether or not we think Andy Samberg's like a perfect human being in this movie. He's not, but like
no one is.
But no one is. And but yeah, for the most part, it's just like a really enjoyable, lighthearted thing. And I think the chemistry between the two of them is fantastic. I think well, let's talk about the plot of this movie a little bit. It's pretty simple movie as far as that goes, as far as a time loop movie. But for whatever reason, we are introduced to Andy Samberg getting up on the day of his girlfriend's friend's wedding.
We've all been there too.
We've all been there too, and we're in a resort little area in Palm Springs for this wedding, for this lovely resort wedding. And we very quickly learned that this is the probably 1,000th or 10,000th or whatever version of this wedding that Andy Samberg has experienced. He has been caught in a time loop for a very, very long time. And now he's just kind of going through the motions, trying to keep himself entertained. And,
doing a bad job of it,
just
honestly.
Sort of doing a bad job of it. He's not really a bad guy. He's not really doing anything intentionally to hurt anybody, but he's also like, I think
1,000% done.
He's done and he's bored and he's like, cracking beers in the middle of the wedding speech and, and all of that kind of stuff. And people are giving him weird looks and all that. But at this point, doesn't matter. Same day, just living it over and over and over. But this day he happens to, try to hit on the sister of the bride. They end up, I should say, his girlfriend's cheating on him, so that he is sort of absolved of the moral quandary there. But he hits on the sister of the bride, and they go off, into the desert, and then Roy shows up,
ambushed by Roy.
So they're off together alone in the desert, having a little romantic moment for themselves. And then a man played by J.K. Simmons, which is one of my favorite character actors anyway.
So good.
But J.K. Simmons shows up to shoot Andy Samberg in the back with an arrow. And as he is running away from Roy, who we learn more about later, He crawls into this cave. He tells the sister of the bride, her name is Sarah, again, played by Christine Milioti, tells her not to go into the cave, but she goes into the cave anyway, and then she gets trapped in the time loop.
Yeah.
And the rest of the film is them stuck in time together and building a friendship and a relationship and experiencing the deadness of being caught in this weird, surreal situation.
Yeah.
And what I loved about it really was there are a couple things. I wrote down a couple quotes actually from this, which for me, one in particular was really where it wears its theme like on its sleeve, which is Sarah at one point says, "It doesn't matter, nothing matters," right? That's what you said, because at the beginning of the movie, Sandberg's over it, and he's kind of like, well, nothing matters. He says, "No, pain matters. What we do to other people matters. Being a source of terror is not fun. It's not fulfilling. I know from experience. It doesn't matter that everything resets and people don't remember. We remember. We have to deal with the things that we do." That stuck with me because it really establishes that this kind of theme of finding meaning, even in what is fundamentally a nihilistic world. I mean, you're caught in a time loop. Literally, you could do anything. It all resets. Sarah's point is correct. Objectively, like, there is no meaning in the universe itself in that sense. But the whole movie is kind of about finding meaning inside that. And that's what I liked about it. So,
yeah,
I don't know. But Paul, you had a little bit of a different take, I feel like.
So while I agree with everything you've just said, I couldn't shake the feeling that this is just a millennial Groundhog Day. And it's just felt kind of cheap.
Do you feel like you could do any movie that would be a time loop kind of movie?
Maybe
and
not.
Have it be.
Maybe not. I think one of the what's so effective about the original, the Groundhog Day.
The original. I like this. This is not a remake.
This
of
is not a
Groundhog
remake.
Day.
But in Groundhog Day, they never show how he got in this time loop.
Yeah.
It's always like you're figuring out why he's with him. In this, they have the scientific reason, and then they figure out a way to get out. There's no really like, I have to be like this to be let out, that kind of thing. So that part, I think if you put that in the Groundhog Day, the movie is not remembered as it is now. It's just kind of if there's like a witch at a carnival or some kind of like hit on the head, like he's just dreaming, that type of thing. It just wouldn't have been as
Groundhog Day. Well, this movie and Groundhog Day. Well, no, not really Groundhog Day so much, but this movie has a couple moments where I think there's an old lady who interacts with Andy Samberg and then later with Christine Milioti,
Nana.
The Nana character, who I think is suspiciously
right.
Was at one point in the script like a magic character. I'm not really sure because
she seems to know.
She seems to know what's going on, and it is a little bit of that like witch at a carnival kind of vibe to it. But it's not on the nose, and it's not there, and because we find the physical version of why the cave itself has some kind of weird quantum physics explanation for why it's whatever, like he got stuck in there. But and then I won't even spoil the end of the movie because it's not relevant to the point of the thing. But they get out eventually, and that's not much of a spoiler to say.
Kind of assume you go into a time loop movie, you're gonna get out.
Right,
yeah,
right. But how they get out is actually how they get out. I really like because it involves work, which most movies of this type don't do. You don't have characters like actively extracting themselves from their situation through intellectual effort, which I think is nice about this movie. But
and another thing that I liked is that the extraction involves work, but also when the way to get out of the time loop is to become a better person.
Yeah,
that's not actually becoming a better person. That's trying to
doing
get
a
out of the
thing
time
for the
Yeah.
reward, right?
So,
Which is true of Groundhog Day.
yes.
Right?
So like these two characters become better people on the way to do it, like while they're doing the work to get out of there. Like so their character development, their arcs are so much more meaningful because it's not tied to their escape from this time loop.
I agree with that. So I don't think there's any way to avoid the comparison to Groundhog Day because there aren't very many of these kinds of movies.
I was kind of expecting to have some kind of like line as well to be like, this is a Groundhog Day.
You could actually 100% see Sandberg including a Groundhog Day reference inside.
I'm kind of surprised there wasn't.
I'm actually a little surprised by that too.
There's probably a legal reason.
Oh, there might be. I don't know. But in any case, like, so we don't have time to get into all of Groundhog Day here. We are going to do it in the Patreon section. So if you, as Paul said, if you're, join us on Patreon, you can get access to that. But one thing I will say about Groundhog Day that I actually really don't like about Groundhog Day, to your point, Jen, is that like Bill Murray does not really become a better person because he's interested in becoming a better person or because he wants to advance his character. He's just sort of trying things to kind of escape the world of his monotony. Mm-hmm. But the other thing I really don't like about Groundhog Day in comparison to this movie, and my hot take that everybody's going to hate, is I actually kind of like this movie better than Groundhog Day, is mostly because of the relationship between Andy Samberg's character Niles and Christina Milioti's character Sarah. They develop a relationship, a genuinely good relationship, over what we have to assume is a very long period of time. I mean, we see a montage of them reliving the day over and over and over together and genuinely waking up every single morning, enjoying the idea of getting to spend the whole day together before they return to any kind of romantic situation. And I mean, there's some hiccups along the way and stuff like that, but like for the most part, like they are building a relationship that is, getting to know each other, and both of them, both sides. Yeah. Groundhog Day is one-sided. It is entirely one-sided. Bill Murray relives the day over and over and over again, so he gets to experiment every single day, learning about different people in the town, learning about Andy McDowell's, Bill Murray's character in Groundhog Day is Phil, and then Andy McDowell's character is Rita, I think. Rita. And so Phil gets to learn about Rita, but Rita never gets to learn about Phil. Yeah. Not in the same way, right? So Phil keeps acquiring information that he uses in really shady ways to try to sort of manipulate people into either like going to bed with him or to like, just get something that he wants out of the relationship. And yet the point of Groundhog Day sort of is like, he's only able to escape the time loop by becoming a less selfish person and finding love or becoming worth loving, I think. I mean, that's kind of what I get out of Groundhog Day. But I don't know why Andy McDowell's character would fall in love with him. Whereas I do get that with Palm Springs. I get why she likes him. I get why they like each other because they've had, I don't know.
Years, probably.
Years, maybe, to get to know each other and to do fun stuff together and build lasting bonds, Yeah. And they've both been able to do that, and that's what I think is better about it.
I think so.
Actually. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm actually going to agree with your hot take. I liked Palm Springs better than Groundhog Day. Sorry, Paul.
No, go ahead.
And for pretty much the same reasons. These characters, even when we see them, we the viewers see them at their worst.
Yeah, they start the movie at kind of their worst in a lot of ways. Well, I mean, there's a dip, as you might expect, towards the third act of the movie. But I actually think we do see them. The day that Sarah goes into the loop is her worst day. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or it's the day after her worst day.
Yeah, pretty much. Like that is the day that she begins to have to deal with the aftermath of the worst thing she's ever done. Yeah. And so Niles is, he alludes to all of this horrible stuff that he's done in previous iterations before Sarah joins the time loop.
The thousands and thousands of days he has relived.
Yes.
Right?
So he alludes to that, but we don't see it as the audience.
Yeah.
So the characters that we are presented with are likable people.
Yeah.
I mean, like they're dealing with some stuff that they got to work through. But they're not terrible.
No.
Whereas
even Andy Samberg's Niles is he's jaded.
Yeah.
And he's gone through probably every stage of this is the thing about Groundhog Day that's fun in a way, but it's also like it's the flaw of it for me compared to this movie is that you actually watch Bill Murray go through all the steps.
Well, I think that's the only reason why Palm Springs works is because everyone's seen Groundhog Day.
Maybe.
So you kind of like, oh, Andy Samberg is Bill Murray if he didn't figure out how to get out.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think that that's true. Like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day, you're seeing at the beginning of his experiences going through the loop over and over and over. Andy Samberg is Bill Murray once he has already developed all the skills. He's learned how to play piano. He saved
everyone's life. Thousands of times.
He's done all this thousands of times, and now he's just kind of there.
Yeah.
Still in it, still doing it. And that's why I do think it's a little different. But of course, in the context of the film, that's what we get, right? We get him at that stage. So I do find him likable, and I get why he's already learned a lot of lessons. And he tries to stop Sarah from learning some of those lessons. He's like, can we skip all of this? She's like trying to kill herself and stuff. And he's like, we could just blow right by this phase.
Not going to work.
It's not going to do anything.
So I think the biggest, I enjoyed the movie. I don't want to, it was a fun movie. But at the end, I don't think the two main characters really actually grew that much in my mind.
Interesting.
Once they go back through the time warp, the time loop, are they actually going to be improved? I'm not left with a hard yes, hard no, especially with Andy Samberg's character.
Yeah.
I think he was just more scared of losing her, which does that make you a better person and going to be an actual likable person on the outside?
Maybe.
But he was also afraid of leaving the time loop and like going back to the real world, and then overcame that partly through wanting to be with Sarah.
Yeah, but is that, I don't know. It didn't leave me with, this is going to be this is a changed man on the outside. He could very easily just revert back into laying on a pool floaty. Yeah. Which the next scene they did. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the character to me that grew the most, and he wasn't even on screen hardly at all, was Roy.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah. So we didn't really talk a whole lot about Roy, but Roy got stuck in the time loop because he partied with Andy Samberg many, many years ago in the context of the film, and Samberg was very inebriated and sort of encouraged him to go into the cave. So Roy had a lot of anger, probably justifiable anger, for feeling like he got trapped in this loop because of Niles. But mostly he was a chaotic element to come into various scenes and like attack Niles or try to kill him or whatever, which is a great thing to have in a script because now you have like something that is fully random that you can throw into any place and throw in a kind of a monkey wrench into the whole thing. But you're right, Roy did end up finding peace.
Found happiness within the time loop. Yeah. And at the end, once Samberg got out and
Sarah sends him like a note saying how to do it and how to escape.
And I left with he's going to try it.
I think so. Yeah.
But it's for the right reasons.
Yeah.
It's to see his kids grow up. It's to be with his wife and grow old with her. And so his character, I fully see growing. And he was only in the movie for 10 minutes?
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think, again, I want to come back just as we wrap this up. I want to come back to this idea of finding meaning in a meaningless world. And that's where, for me, I think that's where Samberg grew. And that's where the distance is in his character and in Sarah's character, because she starts out feeling the same way. Like, the world doesn't mean anything. Love isn't real. Like, everybody is just afraid and alone and scared and just doing whatever, right? And that's kind of how she justifies some of her poor choices, right, in the beginning. And the point of it, though, is that, like, yeah, life could be meaningless if you just don't do anything.
If you let it.
If you let it be, or you can find the meaning and you can create meaning. And that's what they do together, which I think is really, really nice.
And honestly, I think of our two main characters, Niles and Sarah is actually the hero of this film.
Oh, I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's the one who changes the most,
Absolutely.
who grows the most, and has the most at stake.
Yeah.
So,
well, so this is the thing. I mean, because as we've already kind of established, I kind of like talking screenwriting a little bit on this show too. And when you think about what a protagonist is, right? Like, a protagonist is generally somebody to whom there is an inciting incident, but who is otherwise the agent driving the rest of the story. And that is absolutely Sarah. Sarah's inciting incident is going on this day. Even though we don't start the film from her perspective, she is the one who gets sucked into the alternate world, right? She is the one who has to make decisions that affect the outcome. She's the one who, even in the third act, takes action to figure out how to solve the problem, right? Sandberg is the constant throughout most of that, right? Which is kind of an interesting thing, especially because the movie is largely told from his perspective.
Yeah.
But, also really funny. And, I like watching Andy Samberg because he's
a funny guy.
He's funny and he's a dope and it's great. But
there are some Lonely Island Easter eggs in there. It was nice.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all we have time for right now. But if you want us to continue talking about Groundhog Day, which we're going to do in a minute, join us on Patreon, patreon.com/outofframeshow. Patrons get all kinds of different perks, but one of those is bonus content for the podcast. And so today we're going to be continuing on talking about Groundhog Day right after the break. But for everybody else, thank you. We love you anyway. Please subscribe to this channel, to check us out on youtube.com/feeonline, fee.org/shows. I think you can now find us on Twitter and Instagram for Out of Frame as well. And thank you for watching.